huge. I mean, it's like a man. It's big.
Kane's son.
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism.
Just tell me one thing, Burke. You're going out there to destroy them, right? Not to study, not to bring back, but to wipe them out.
That's the plan. You have my word on it.
All right, I'm in.
Let's rock!
Don't look back, dude! Run as fast as you can!
Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Prater, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Patrick Green.
Welcome to the show, everyone, and we are glad to be here. Christian could not be here with us. He is traveling. This is a big week for us, or coming up. Lots of travel. We're going to see Alien Romulus together, and he'll be on the Alien Romulus Reactions episode.
Yes, there's so much going on right now. You and I also just recorded a Hive episode seconds before we did this. This is all systems go. It's been incredible. We're back from San Diego Comic-Con. We're about to go watch this film. We have premiere screenings. We have everything going on. But we do want to also, before we let it go too much farther, come back around with you about something really exciting out of Comic-Con, which was the new game Alien Rogue Incursion that is coming to VR systems from Survios, a really cool VR company. Now, we've actually known about this for a long time. We spoke with them quite a long time ago, signed NDAs, didn't want to say anything about it. But this is something that's been in the works for a very long time. And they were like, if you guys are going to be at Comic-Con, we need to make sure we link up with you there. And we did, and it was wonderful. One of the probably the most exciting thing about this whole thing is that Alex White is the writer of the story. Alex needs no introduction, but just in case you're not acquainted with their work or with what they've done for Alien, Alex wrote the two probably most highly regarded Alien books of the modern era, at least in terms of the Cold Forge and Into Charybdis. And Alex is also just a wonderful, personal friend of mine and of the show and of many people in fandom. And so having Alex writing an Alien game is really a dream come true. The other cool thing about this, and this was something that we did not know about until just a couple of days before this interview went live, and we only found out about it because we found out who we were interviewing, is that Zula Hendricks is back. Zula, of course, was famously introduced in Aliens Defiance, which was Brian Wood and Tristan Jones' late Dark Horse comic, and she's since appeared in a few different forms of media and has been a big fan favorite character. And having Zula, and by extension Davis 1, back for this is really exciting. Something that we were talking about just a moment ago on our little on the Patreon episode about Comic-Con. I was mentioning how it was nice getting to meet Dave Dorman in person and how I really felt like the spirit of Dark Horse was still kind of very much alive. Zula, of course, is a Dark Horse character, and getting her to be, the lead character in a new major Alien game, I don't know, it's just cool. It feels like the ghosts of Dark Horse are still with us, and I think that's a good thing for Alien fandom.
Yeah, I am someone who I'm not familiar as much with the games as everyone knows, but it was great to be immersed in that culture, but more importantly, the culture of people who create these kinds of things. I don't know if I'll ever play Rogue Incursion, just because I don't have a VR, and but I know that since talking with the creators behind it, they want to give us as best experience as possible. So we'll keep everyone kind of on notice as to what that will be and what we experience. But it's very much like a filmmaking process. You have writers, you have actors, you have composers to create this experience. Obviously, the end product is very different than a film, but the immersion of it is very much like a film where you're in this environment and it's VR and things are happening. And even oftentimes the creators themselves are talking about, we don't know what's going to happen with this or with this or with this or with this while you're playing the game. So that was really great to hear more about that experience and to anticipate what it's going to be like when it actually releases.
Yeah, and just a little more context on this. This happened on Saturday, right before our interview with Fede, Alvarez about Alien Romulus coming out. So it was a big day in Perfect Organism land. We were very busy, and we have been kind of looking at this like, okay, we'll have this kind of like quiet experience with Survios beforehand, and then we'll talk to Fede. And it's not to say we weren't excited about Rogue Incursion because we have been, but we've also been a little bit, I mean, like we have a major movie that's imminently coming out, so that's been kind of getting a lot of our attention. So we're like, well, let's like learn about the game, and it'll be a nice kind of laid back session. And all of us unanimously by the end of this, and Adam Zeller too, who was there, which was awesome. We couldn't, and Natasha, we could not stop talking about how excited we were for Rogue Incursion to come out, because like the second those interviews started, it was just like, person after person after person gave us such interesting insight into the game, into the world building, into the experience of programming in a VR environment, of writing music for a VR environment, of like how to create characters that are memorable in a VR environment. It was really, really interesting. And it was gradually dawning on me like, oh, this is like going to be a really exciting thing too. Like Romulus is not the only thing happening in Alien right now. So I left that interview like, I mean, I was so excited. Like I was just like, paddling around the hallway, like, getting just, I was really, really hyped up for it. And since then I've continued to be like, we're going to get a VR headset to be able to play this. We don't have one yet, but, we've decided as a family, we're going to do that. And I can't wait to play it. So the audio that you're going to hear is a little chaotic because it was a very busy room with a lot of things going on in it. We did not get enough time, as Jamie was mentioning, with Alex. I think because in the beginning they were trying to figure out the timing of these interviews, and it was looking like we were not going to have as much time with everybody as we ended up having. And Alex was our first chat, so I'm saying this now. I really hope we have Alex back on to talk more about this. I'm sure we will before the game comes out, and have more of an in-depth conversation with them about how they came up with these characters and etc. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, we hope that you'll excuse some of the hubbub and the room noise because it was crazy. But we really hope you enjoyed this really cool roundtable conversation. But thanks to the entire team at Survios, thanks to the people who set this up for us, and we hope you enjoyed this little taste of what's coming for the holiday season of 2024 by Survios.
I also want to just shout out to the people at Survios, and they were like, we love you guys, and we wanted to be a part of your show. We wanted to connect with you because that's how much we love you, and we listen to you guys all the time. So to hear that, they weren't saying that to other people, they were saying that to us, and it was really amazing. So thank you, Survios, for your kindness, for your generosity, for your swag. We really appreciate it, and we are so excited about this game.
Yeah, the vibe was fantastic. The Alien fan vibe at Survios is legit. So, here we go. All right, we are here finally talking about, and something we've been very excited about for a long time, Alien Rogue Incursion, a new video game in the Alien universe. And we are here with someone who will be very familiar to you, Alex White. Alex, thank you for talking to us.
I'm so happy to be here in person finally with all of you. This is really exciting.
It is exciting. So we have limited time. We wanted to ask a little bit about the story. We know that you've been involved with the story for this. What can you tell us about the game and how the story came together?
Well, I am the writer of the story, so involved might be a bit of a underselling it. But so I can tell you that it is about Zula Hendricks and Davis 1 entering a black site to save their friend Benjamin Carver, who is a unique new character here. We'd love to talk more about that if you want. What do we want to talk about the story?
My question would be, how do you approach a story like this? How far into the lore do you need to get to then come up with your own version of this story?
So that is a really interesting question, because to come up with our own story, at the same time, we have the Dark Horse comics, which are well known, right? Defiance, Resistance, Rescue. However, a lot of those issues are actually out of print. And so one of the things that we stayed really true to was, the events of Defiance. And not to say that we weren't true to the rest of it. It's just that the lore of Defiance is the core lore of Zula Hendricks and Davis 1, and so we really wanted to make sure that we nailed that before we started worrying about any of the stuff that was more advanced and down the road.
So you said a couple of hot button words in that. None other than Zula Hendricks is coming back, who's a character who was a big hit for the Dark Horse comics, as well as Davis 1, who has come up many times, especially lately when we've had conversations and shows around AI and the treatment of artificial intelligence in the alien universe. You have obviously a background in tech and a background in science fiction in general. How do you approach the idea of AI in the alien universe, and how does it show up in this game?
Well, that's so interesting because Davis 1 is more than a machine learning algorithm because, I don't have a lot of empathy for machine learning algorithms, but I do have a lot of empathy for Davis, who's a character who's portrayed as having experienced the singularity and joined us here on the side of humanity, right? And I think that is thematically different, and I think that he is a unique character for it, that he's somebody that it's easy to give identity and agency to. Versus a lot of other AI types like a Working Joe or something like that. I would say that we have largely focused around creating a good friendship and partnership between Zula Hendricks and Davis 1, as opposed to focusing on whether or not we're treating machine learning algorithms like equals.
And can you give us any hints about this new character that you mentioned, the person that they're going into the black site to save?
Ben Carver. So Ben Carver is a former colonial Marine as well. So unlike Zula Hendricks, he has been to more than one battle. She's sort of her notable back injury at the start of that. But he's somebody who was close to her at that first battle. Somebody had to pull her off the battlefield. So that will be our Ben Carver character.
Alex White, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patrick and Jamie and Christian. Thank you so much. And Adam is somewhere around.
We can't wait for this. Thank you.
Me neither.
Okay, we are here now with TQ Jefferson of Survios, the company behind this very exciting game that's coming out, and he's going to take us a little bit through the game. So first off, TQ, can you let us know a little bit about your role at Survios?
So my role at Survios is I'm the Chief Product Officer of the company, and I'm the Creative Director for Alien Rogue Incursion.
That's fantastic. And what can you tell us about Rogue Incursion as a project in terms of how it came to be?
Oh, how it came to be? So when I joined Survios, one of my goals was to help Survios level up in terms of going after bigger licenses where we can make more ambitious games, take bigger swings, put more budget behind the game. And Alien is a perfect game for VR. There's no better platform. Now that I've been developing it for a while, I could say that, confidently. It was meant for VR. So we came up with a concept, and we pitched it to Disney. We kind of knew where the white space was in the franchise, meaning like what hasn't been touched yet, what hasn't been done, and VR is pretty wide open for the franchise. So we pitched it. They liked what we had to say, and then we got to work making the game.
My question would be, in terms of a game like this, you're entering a universe that's been established since 1979. How do you make it fresh?
Oh, well, that's one of the great things about working with Disney or 20th Century Studios, is that they're very open to people or teams or creatives adding to the IP, helping it expand and helping it grow and bringing in new ideas. So part of our original pitch was an original story, an established character, Zula Hendricks, and giving her an original adventure that hasn't been in the books, hasn't been in a film, and Disney and 20th Century were really game for that, no pun intended.
VR itself has a certain amount of limitation to it, but are there ways that those limitations actually became assets for what you want to do with the game?
Yes. limitations are a good thing in a lot of cases because it focuses what you're going to do. One of the things that comes to mind instantly is that when we're telling a story, you are the camera in VR. So we can't do things like cut away to, meanwhile, this is what's happening at this base or whatever, because you're the camera. If we wrench control away from the player like that, it'll make them nauseous. It really breaks the experience. So everything that's happening is happening in real time to you. So it's almost like a film that is presented in one long take. And those restrictions were very interesting because then how do we tell story in a world that is frenetic when you're having, xenomorphs, coming at you from all angles and so forth. And we found great ways to layer in story that take advantage of the platform rather than try to work around it.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thanks.
Okay, now we're here with two more people integrally involved in this very exciting Alien Rogue Incursion game, which every interview we do I'm getting more and more hyped for. I'm going to have them introduce themselves and a little bit about their role with this project.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on. My name is Eugene Elkin. I'm the game director and also the lead software engineer in the game.
I'm Tate Mosesian. I'm the studio art director, art directing the game.
So art direction is in common with the two of you, it sounds like. So what are some unique constraints in terms of developing art in a VR environment? That's something that I think is really interesting.
Constraints in games really revolve around tech and performance. And so it's our job to try and recreate these environments and characters in an aesthetic way within the limitations. Engineering does a lot of work towards refining and optimizing and giving us tools to do that. And in this case, I think for VR especially, we've been able to achieve a level of aesthetic fidelity that I think will rival anything you've seen in VR and maybe even some console games. So I'm excited for people to get in there and play it.
There's actually an interesting critical point of what made environment art in this specific game more difficult than I think in a typical game, because we got a very unique enemy, the xenomorph. It can climb on anything. It can be on walls, on ceilings, on top of computer desks, and it can't hold a gun, it can't open doors. Its intelligence comes from its relentless stalking, able to use the environment against you, hide in plain sight. So not only do we need to create an environment that looks visually and aesthetically just beautiful, but also you needed to support the tech. There's lots and lots of I don't want to go into it exactly how it's implemented, but it took us over a year just to get right, because most enemies walk on floors, and that's a very standard, the nav mesh, well-known technique in games. But this thing, it will surprise you every time you play. One of the first things we created was a hallway, and it looked beautiful, and we knew we figured it out when every time we played it over and over, the xenomorph did something different. Sometimes it popped out of the vent on the floor and just scared the crap out of you. Other times, it's nowhere to be found, and it's hiding. It's perching somewhere, and your motion tracker is not giving the information you need, right? Because all of a sudden, you had a beep, beep, and then nothing. And every time it's different. Sometimes two will pop out. Someone will run through a ceiling, you'll shoot it, it'll duck into a wall and disappear, and you don't know why, because it's toying with you. And it has to perfectly play with how we're building the environment.
So to that end, as creators of this game, have you been scared? Has it scared you playing the game, even though you know? Really?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier about developers in the studio who, after 2 years of working on this project, put on the headset and still scream during a playtest. For that reason, because we don't know specifically where they're going to come from. And we're building the game. We've got some idea. And when we're working on the game, we sometimes ask, because it's not always perfect. When you're working on it, we sometimes ask ourselves, where are the Xenos? Something broke. But then we go in and we figure it out, like something blocked them or whatever. And that is the challenge of going back and forth between design, combat design especially, and art, because they're sort of sometimes working in opposition, because you want to make the art look good, but you also have to create spaces that xenomorphs can traverse. But with that said, us focusing, because of the style of combat, the aesthetic is more focused towards the 1986 film Aliens. And so we've been able to achieve that. And you really will feel like you're in that world. Now, we've taken that and we haven't copied it specifically. We've taken it and we've said, what are these sort of visual rules to follow, and then we're creating new spaces. So it's not like you're going to drop into the exact Hadley's Hope environment, but you'll be in a world that feels very much like it.
So in VR, there can't be cutscenes. You can't have an establishing shot that gives you a wide open space, correct? But also, going back to the 1979 film, there has been a visual language that Ron Cobb started with his semiotic standard that gave you indications of what a hallway leads to. Is that something that was useful for you to help the player navigate through a space that they can't have a bird's eye view of?
Well, I'll start there, and Ron Cobb is sort of the architect. Sid Mead as well, and so we have adopted all of those familiar visual cues and the visual language. So not only the iconic imagery, the icon imagery that helps guide you through spaces, but even construction, the way the worlds are built, give you an indication of really where we want the player to go. So it's sort of a way of not a great word, but manipulating the player into places that you want them to be, strictly through visuals and sound.
And regarding the cutscenes, you're absolutely right. Because in VR, you do not take the camera control away from the player because it's nausea-inducing. It's one of the first ground rules of VR, don't do this. But we've been doing VR for over 10 years now at Survios, and I don't want to spoil the surprise, but we toy an idea with what a cutscene and how we can make it. Cutscenes are important to games or into games, just because it's a beautiful way to tell narrative, something that you are forcing to happen, and it's a must happen. In VR, it is difficult, but just when you play the game, put a pin in it. We've spent quite a bit of time on trying to get really iconic narrative moments in the game, and the only way to do that was this twisted kind of like, I don't want to spoil it, but there are cinematics. There we go. I'll stop right there.
We could have copped out and not done it, but we realized how important it was to the game, and so we figured a way out how to do it.
My question is, obviously, for forever, since 2013, 2014, isolation has been the top. Has that influenced your creative approach to Rogue Incursion?
Isolation is an incredible game, right? It is the gold standard for an Alien game. Now, we are now not in any sort related or our spiritual successor to the IP. We wanted to do our own thing. As much as Alien Isolation is inspired by Alien, the first one, while we are inspired by both films, absolutely, we are more inspired by the second movie, by Aliens. We want to introduce the combat, the badass colonial Marines. So I think we want it to stand on its own and not ride anybody's coattails.
I think the approach we took was more sort of focused on the film and how the combat played out in those iconic moments. So it's not necessarily that we're just going to be throwing a wave of xenomorphs at the player to ramp up or down difficulty. The difficulty is already there, built into the mechanics of the creature, and so you're going to get these sort of targeted moments where there are a few, 3, maybe 4 xenomorphs working together, and sometimes independently, trying to get you. So it is really, again, being authentic, especially to the second film.
Yeah, I realized that we're empowering the player, whereas in Isolation, the first one, it's more of a disempowerment, and I think that's the big difference there.
That's really cool. Just a quick question for me. So I personally don't have. I'm a very big gamer. I don't have a ton of VR experience, and I know you said Survios has been working in the space for at least a decade now. Why VR, and what do you think makes it different from an Alien player's perspective?
The moment you put on the headset, something usually happens to first-time players. They go, whoa, I feel like I'm somewhere else. And this type of immersion just cannot be replicated in a typical console game where it's displayed on a monitor or your TV. So to really step into the world and to see in 3D the size and the fear a xenomorph can induce when it's standing right next to you, it's almost awe-inspiring. You just cannot get that anywhere else. Or the same thing when a face hugger, right, slaps right on your face. The fear and the ability to want to just yank it off. Once again, only in VR.
It's gross too.
Yeah, it's gross. It's very gross.
The hallway you described early on, setting up a hallway and then walking in there with the headset and not knowing where the alien is, it's like a nightmare. It's like you're describing a terrible nightmare that you had, and that is so exciting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we are here with Andio Winslow.
Thanks for pronouncing my name correctly.
I appreciate it.
All right, good job.
Thank you. Off to a good start. Who is portraying, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Zula Hendricks in Alien Rogue Incursion. This is like huge news for Alien fans. Zula is a beloved character, and I guess I want to go into how you brought her to life.
Well, it's been 8 years since she was on the pages. Now she's coming to screens, not just screens, your personal VR screen. So for me, I read this comic book, I guess maybe 5 years ago, and I came across it. And then when I got the casting for this, I'm like, this kind of sounds familiar. I don't know. It could be anything because it's always code names. And then when I got booked, and I was like, Zula Hendricks, wait a second now. I think that's Alien. Went back and looked, I'm like, oh, snap, it is Alien. So then I was very excited because Alien's been, I guess, people in my family are fond of sci-fi, action, horror. So it was really cool. And I lost the question. I'm gone. I'm totally gone. What was the question?
Oh, no, you're totally
Okay.
good. You kidding me? We're just talking about how you brought Zula to life. And
how did I
it's so
bring her
cool
to
to
life,
hear
yeah.
you were already a fan of her character like we
Yes,
all were, too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's cool to see someone who looks like me in a world that does not yet exist in the future, taking names, saving people, leading with empathy, leading with principle. She's fighting several battles. She's fighting against xenomorphs, of course, face huggers and chest bursters. She's fighting against corporate greed. She's fighting to save her friends and her comrades. She's, fighting her own personal demons, but she's also, differently abled. She's been injured, so she's fighting a battle that a lot of people fight every day invisibly. So I think she's a really well-rounded character, and for that reason, I'm like, okay, I would love to bring this character to life. And then the creative team at Survios, they are helping me build a world, and they're giving me all this data that I don't get in normal video game recordings. So it's not just barking commands. It's like, here's what happened, here's why, here's her intention. So I think in that way, it just feels like a more robust experience for me as an actor, and also just, I know that when y'all get the game, you're gonna feel the essence and feel the intention, and that just is something to be really proud about. So not just, my acting, but the sound design and what you're seeing with your eyes. And so it's gonna be an experience, not just playing a game. That's how I feel anyway. Hopefully that's true.
Yeah. My question is, in terms of, I would say Zula is as iconic in her own way next to Ripley. How do you approach her character to bring her to life, knowing that Ripley exists? How do you make her your own? Like, what do you do for the research of the character?
Well, first you go back and you look at the source material because you want to stay authentic to the vision, and also it's a 45-year franchise, right? So we're celebrating 45 years, so you want to stay authentic to that and the context. But then I think about Ripley and Zula's relationship, and it's like mentorship, right? It's friendship, but I guess it started with mentorship, then it became friendship. Would you say? Yeah, mentorship, friendship, mentor. It's like it's on the line. So for me, I think back to like who's played that role in my life. And then I use that, I guess they call it sense memory, and I say, well, how would I feel if this is what happened with my mentor, my friend, or someone who was bridging those lines? And then I think I was discussing over there, too, in terms of how do I bring her to life. It's all personal experience. So my family is a lot of military folks from Air Force, Marines, Navy. So in my essence is this issue of respect and discipline, and that's also how I approach professional athletics when I played. So I think I take all that discipline, and I use that to approach my recording sessions. So I think I'm uniquely primed to play this role because I love Alien franchise. Understand military and what the sacrifice is without having served. And I also understand what it means to be part of a team and to collaborate. And I think this game is a collaboration, but also what Zula does on a daily basis in her efforts is collaborative. She's trying to save humanity, and she's trying to do it with her synth, but she's also trying to make a way out of no way. And I think I feel that, and I can bring that essence to the recording sessions. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
I've just been going. Thank you. I didn't do it for the game, but I'm lazy, that's why.
So we will be, in essence, being Zula going through this. Are there ever reflections? And if so, did they use your likeness by any chance when designing this character?
I don't know that I can say, and I don't think so, no. I've not actually seen the game, and I think that might be I think it's actually good that I haven't seen the game because I've seen parts of it, but I think I want to be as excited to have for the reveal when it happens. But they do show me imagery sometimes when we're shooting, and so I can see the environment. But no, I don't. It's not. But I will be cosplaying her for Halloween. So you know.
I just want to say, so I'm the one who's got headphones on, so I'm hearing your voice coming through the mic, and it's crazy because you really feel like Zula, like you feel like the voice that I had in my head when I was reading those comics years ago, which is really, really cool. And I wanted to go back. I had a question in there somewhere that I got distracted by about Zula. I got it. One of the aspects of Zula Hendricks that I loved so much as a reader and has continued to come up in other places in the expanded universe is her unique relationship with Davis One. Mm-hmm. How did you approach that with this game? Is that something that you like? How does that kind of develop, and how did you kind of act that out?
I think it's apropos too because we're talking about AI a lot. This is an embodied AI with a heart, sentient AI. I don't actually know. Let me think about that. You stumped me. I think what's happened is friendship exists on many levels, and you've got some friends who have been, standoffish and cold, and they're trying to warm up. And I kind of think when I was approaching Davis One, I was like, this is like so and so who's just now making a turn in their middle age. Now they're like, I can feel now. I can express myself now. So there's that. And then also, she's by herself. She's by herself in this journey. And even though he's inanimate, that's all she got. It kind of reminded me of Wilson. Yeah. So, Wilson. So I was kind of like, imagine you're Tom Hanks in the sea. And that's kind of how so it's like part Wilson in the sea and part thinking about friends who are now coming into their emotional intelligence. Yeah, but there's a lot of Wilson in the sea. Yeah.
This is more an observation. It may turn into a question as I'm speaking. Zula is not only a survivor in the comic book, but she is literally a survivor because Dark Horse Comics lost the license, and all of that got swept away when Marvel came in, and then she keeps coming back. She came back in books, and now she's here in a video game. It's like this character... I gotta stop hitting the table. This character is resonating with both fans and creators. And I guess I'm just saying this as something that I think is really cool, that so many other things could have just been, pushed aside and said, no, we're not going to do that. But Zula stands strong.
She does. She defies. You see what I did there? Hey. For the nerds. But that's a really good observation. Yeah, she doesn't want to go away. She's resolute.
And she's also, what I love is of course Dark Horse lost the license to make the comic books, which is not a good thing or a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Marvel's doing amazing stuff, but Zula is something that kind of survived the Dark Horse days, which as Christian is mentioning. So do you feel any sense of responsibility with her to kind of keep her going in fandom? Because you kind of feel that?
Not until this moment. But thank you so much for putting that on my shoulder. I think the responsibility I felt going into this project was all right, I've not been alive as long as this franchise has been alive. It's 45 years. And I get to be a part of it. So that's a legacy that I'm really excited to be a part of. And so for me, it's more let's do justice to what was created in 1979 or 78, I guess, when they were writing it. And let's help continue it. And then this year we've got movies coming out in August. We've got a TV show coming out next year. This is not going away. And so to be a part of that just means I need to pull my weight. I need to do my job. I need to make sure that I'm researched. I've done the research, that I'm keeping authentic with my efforts, that I'm taking the context cues as they come, both in the past and the present, that I'm working collaboratively with the team. And what they're building is different, and I think also what's different is Survios, again, the standard of care they have as creators is different than what I've experienced in other video games. It's not just Excel spreadsheets, you're here, we don't have time, lunch, okay. They're like, hey, how do you feel? And they're asking the creators how you feel. You should take a break. You should go home early. And this is not something people talk about. Exactly. So I think that essence and that intention is going to... It's like the life force of the company, but it's also going to seep into the game because you can feel it's like the human element. And so you got Davis, who's a synth, but the human element has seeped into him, and he's more alive, and that relationship is built. So it's all, I think, strangely aligned, and it's a really cool project to be a part of. So
love it.
Would you be open to do a sequel?
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
My question is, in terms of actually recording, how do you stay in that creative space? Because there's multiple takes. There's, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. Is that a challenge as an actor?
I think it's only a challenge if you don't have a collaborative team around you. Our team, we have in the room, well, I'm in the booth on the other side of the glass. We've got the engineer, Bradley, and then you've got the director, Kritsia, and then you've got the writer, Zoe's in the room, and TQ's in the room too. When does that happen? Like the head of studio in the room, like that's not, I'm telling y'all, it's different. So I can say, hey, what does this mean? What came before, or why? And we can sit and talk about it. And so we're actually having discussions. So if I get lost, I'm like, wait a second, hold up, y'all, do you mind if we take a moment? And that helps me stay anchored. But then it's also the direction. It's sometimes they'll play back another voice so I can read off of it. But it's really just, hey, look, here's some gameplay, or take a look at this room. What do you think? Or, I'm holding something. I'm holding a pulse rifle in my hand so I can actually be anchored. And also, I'm not delivering the lines like standing, bilaterally or unilaterally. I'm standing in a stance that makes me feel like I'm in action. And when I'm reading lines, I'm moving around. The way the mic is set up, I can move and not have to worry about being on axis. I can actually be in space, and I think that helps. And obviously in VR, you're in space. You're not just seeing this game. You're going to see it, you're going to hear it, you're going to feel it, and you're going to experience it in a way you would in a normal video game. And I think that's why VR is a really great idea for this particular game.
Awesome.
Speaking of movement, you have a career that goes far beyond just, not just, but being the lead in an awesome video game. You're a professional athlete, a filmmaker in your own right. Can you tell, because this is for a lot of Alien fans, probably the first time they're going to be meeting you. Tell us a little bit about your work outside of Alien, and also maybe how that informs some of this.
I mean, I like to say that my best work is finding the best burritos in California, but that's my movement-based work.
La Chicas Frescas in Pomona.
I'm going to have to, listen, don't play with me. Don't you play with me, because that's where I'm going next.
Okay.
But no, I grew up playing sports. Sports has been a really important part of my life. I think people think sports and they just think, elite athletes doing things, executing, it's over. But sports and athletics, it's storytelling. It's art. It's entertainment, as is this. So I think when I transitioned from professional sports to voice acting or to acting, it wasn't that disparate of a move. It's the same thing. You show up every day. You advance the ball. You work with your team. You work with your coach. You do it again the next day. You don't stress out about the minutia. Did you do it or didn't you do it? Get out and do it again. And so, I think that's why I think I'm enjoying this career so much, because I get it. Our mission is to get this game done. My mission was to hit the ball in the hole, or to run a certain speed, or to race down a mountain. There's where we're going. Here's where we start. Here are the things you need to do in between. Get up in the morning and get your job, get it done. And there's no you don't have to be precious about it. So I think that helps me just push through. And I still love sport. I love voice acting, and it feels like a kind of in this game in particular, a merging of worlds. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying it.
Well, speaking of that, finding out that you did the narration for the Brittany Griner biography, that is such an amazing, someone who you already know what it's like to be a professional athlete, and then to read this amazing story. Did that feel good?
Oh yeah, it felt great. I mean, go Team USA. Brittany, BG, she very harrowing journey. I used to play ball back in the day too, so I kind of felt like, not that I know this person, but I understand the stakes. I understand what it means to make sacrifice. I understand what it means to have your identity tied to what you do. I understand, the impetus for doing what you do, and also doing what you do as a black woman and as a female athlete. It's different for female professional athletes than it is for male athletes. And all those experiences I've had personally, I can attach to and anchor my performance for Brittany's voice. When we were recording that, they didn't want me to imitate her voice. I could have done voice matching, really lower my voice and make it deep. But they said, no, it's not about the sound of her voice, the timbre, it's about the intention. And I think when they were auditioning folks, no one could achieve it because no one understood. It's not sense memory. I know what it is to be on the line. I understand it. So I was already anchored in a way that I think other people weren't, because I get it. And it's really cool to see her achieving what she's achieving and traveling internationally again with the protection of her team.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking, I would love to see you play her in a movie or a show. That would be awesome.
Zula?
Let's make it happen.
Hello?
But
testing?
But that's it. Thank you so much for your
Thank you all so
time.
much. I appreciate the
We're so
questions.
excited about this game.
Yeah, and also thanks for the questions that, you've made me think about some things in ways I haven't yet, so I really appreciate that. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea Winslow, and make sure everybody give her a follow on social media too to keep up, because like we said, she does much more than just this. I keep saying just this. This is freaking amazing. This is a new Alien video game starring Zula Hendricks. But we're really happy to have you in the fandom, and we can't wait to see what you did.
Thank you.
Where's that burrito?
All right, we're here with Sarah Barone, the composer of the score for Alien Rogue Incursion. I'm excited because I get to talk to a composer, which is always a big day for me. And we're so excited to have you here on Perfect Organism talking about this game. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you guys.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this project, kind of what that was like, and if you have a personal background with Alien.
Yeah, absolutely. I had pitched for it back, many months ago. I had written a demo, which was sort of a combat piece, and I didn't have a lot of information at all about the project, but I, vaguely knew the universe that it was in, and that was enough to get me super excited. I came on board, earlier this year around December, January, and I'm super thrilled and honored to be working with Survios. They're such an amazing team. I've been working really closely with the audio lead, Chris Dang, it's been unlike anything I've ever worked on before.
So, coming from the legacy of Elliot Goldenthal, Goldsmith, and James Horner, how do you approach this? How do you make it your own, but also understanding the legacy that it comes from? Because that music, of course, is amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been the greatest challenge and joy, I think, of working on this. I mean, from the very beginning, those early conversations I had about the project, that's exactly what we were discussing. How do we pay tribute in some way to these really loved, iconic scores, but do something new, because this game is very new. There's nothing like it out there. It's a VR immersive game. So, I had to think a lot about what elements of the original scores to sort of incorporate into my score, but in a new and modern context. And I think a lot of the approach musically, that I had was, I thought the music really needed to have a symbiotic relationship with the sound design. And that was kind of paramount in our early discussions, because, we really didn't want it to feel like a wall-to-wall, music-heavy, thematic thing. There's so much, it's so immersive, it's so visceral. There's so much in the environment for the player to experience, in that they really need to hear. And, the sound of broken wires, the sound of creaks, and all of that is paramount to the terror. So I really built a score that sort of walks the line between music and sound design. And, there certainly are thematic moments, because this is a character-driven story, and there's character development and a lot of really exciting elements to that. But also, it was paramount to sort of create a sound for the environment and these aliens. So a lot of times, many of the sounds that sort of drive the score are very, unconventional, sounds that are created by recording woodwinds, for instance, and in ways that are non-traditional. Like, one of the main motifs of the game is built from a flute player singing into a flute while playing a multiphonic, which is a very strange effect, and then running that through electronic processing. And so it creates this sound that sounds a little bit like an alien cry, and we've used it in different ways to sort of indicate threat. And that's just one example of how the music sort of serves as it sort of walks the line between sound design and music.
That's awesome. I'm going to pass this to Christian in a minute, but what you're describing also sounds a little bit like how Vangelis approached the score for Blade Runner, where he incorporated sounds of the world into the actual score. So it's all immersive. That's amazing. my next question, I guess, would be, what inspires you as a musician?
You know, it's a great question. I would say what drew me to this industry generally is how collaborative it is. And I used to play piano, and growing up I did classical performance, and I used to think I wanted to be a performer, and then quickly realized I wasn't meant for the stage. But I realized what I really love doing is working with other creatives and storytellers on, visual media projects. And so collaboration is, at the heart of what I do and was what excites me the most. So when I start a project like this, where I really feel like, I need to be experimental and I want to, think outside of the box, I get really inspired by bringing in musicians who are really interesting, artistic, and who play not only are they masters of their instrument, but they also have unique ways of playing their instrument. So, for instance, on this score, I worked a lot with a woodwind player who's based in Greece. His name's John Bennett. He's incredible. He has this arsenal of instruments, and he plays them in very non-traditional ways, like I was saying, with the singing and all of that. And working with players like that gives me so much inspiration, because then we do a session, we get a bunch of sounds that are varied, and then I go into my studio, I take them and I warp them, I add effects, I run them through synths, and that's really what kind of sparks my ideas and creativity.
So until you mentioned it, I hadn't really thought about how a wall-to-wall score would be out of place in a VR game. Have you ever done a VR game before, or have you done scores for other kinds of video games? What's your history with this? Also, is the score going to be available separately so that we can buy it?
So that I'm actually not completely sure, so I'll hopefully we'll hear about that soon. But this is my first time doing a VR score, and I've worked on games in the past in different capacities, but this is really unlike anything I've ever worked on. I most recently have done some TV work. I worked on the score for Planet Earth 3 with alongside co-composers Jacob Shea and Hans Zimmer. I'm a part of a composer collective called Bleeding Fingers Music, which was started by Hans and partially owned by Sony as well. And I've worked on a variety of projects through them, which I've been really grateful for it. But this is really the first of this kind that I've done. I mean, I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I'm a huge horror fan. I tend to gravitate towards dark stories. So this was just I felt very at home working on this.
So something that I always find, so I've only written for linear things, personally, for concert pieces and for films and things like that. When you're working in a changing environment like a video game, what's your workflow look like, and how are you arranging it in a way? Because it's going to be a different experience every time you play it, right? So how do you do that?
I'm really glad you asked that, because this process-wise, this has been very different from anything else I've done, and that's because from the very beginning, the audio lead, Chris Stang, really encouraged me to take a generative and modular approach to the music, which is it's a way of doing video game scoring that is kind of becoming increasingly popular, but it hasn't been the standard way to do it. So it's kind of a newer way to approach writing, and it's basically rejecting the linear approach and thinking generatively. So, to give you an example, I'll write a piece of music, a minute or two, that consists of 4 stems, right? 4 different parts. And then I'll write maybe 3 variations of each of those stems, and thinking that at any point, these 4 stems, any of the stems in this grouping can be paired together unexpectedly, so they all need to work in any combination. So it really opens your mind to just working in that way where it's no longer linear, and I'm actually able to sort of test how it will work using Ableton, where I can input all of my stems for a piece, randomize it, and then output 15 minutes of music and listen to it. And then through this process, I'm like, okay, this is how it would sound if the player was in this zone for 15 minutes, right? And what's cool about it is it's always changing, it's unpredictable, and I think that's really what we wanted for the game, because the game is so unpredictable. You can get into dynamic combat at any point. So it was important for the score to feel like it was always changing and unexpected, and this approach really allowed us to do that.
Is it hard to compose that way in terms of, because you have so much less control over like the the harmonic content and the melody and things like that? Like, do you find, is it kind of a fun challenge, or like how does that feel?
It is, and it's very fun. And at first it was kind of, it was difficult to wrap my head around, to kind of like think differently from how I had been thinking for all of these years. But it's sort of the thing is where once you get it, it just kind of clicks, and then you feel actually more creative. But we do still have some linear pieces of music in the game, and it's important in certain moments that are fixed or that need to be really thematic. And so there are ways to kind of play around with like mixing linear writing with generative. So for instance, say we're entering a new zone and a new piece of music is going to come in, I can create an intro to that piece of music which is fixed. So the player will always hear that when they first go in, but then it becomes generative after that. So then it's always unexpected after that. But if, for instance, I want to have like a theme, a very clear theme for that zone, we can still have that happen by using that fixed, 2-mix as an intro. So we've played a lot with kind of mixing and matching. But the idea is that at any point you can engage in dynamic combat, so it needs to be able to evolve really quickly, and the generative nature of these pieces helps with that.
As a layman, how many hours of music do you actually produce? Like, that's on the cutting room floor, or just in general? Like, so you have the music you've produced for the game. How much extra is there?
I don't even know. I mean, I think it's meant to be about an hour and a half of music, I think. But yeah, I mean, process-wise, before I started writing specific pieces meant for different parts of the game, I wrote a lot of themes. So that was kind of like my way into the project. Like, as I was finding a sound palette, working with these experimental musicians, I was writing themes for all the various parts of the game. So these are like 5-minute long suites that sort of those are the building blocks of the score. So that was like my way into the project, and from there I've been able to sort of take the sonics and the ideas and make a whole score out of it.
Was there ever a film score that, as you're watching a movie, you heard it and you thought, this is what I want to do? Because you said you sort of transitioned away from more of a classical path. Is there a film, it doesn't have to be one of the Alien films, is there a film that just kind of jumped out at you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have to mention it, the first Alien movie, because what's so incredible about it is from the very beginning you get this sense of building dread from very minimal music, and I think that is so effective in setting a mood and setting like the foundation for the movie. So I mean, I have to say Alien 1 because it's incredible. But I would say I'm a big fan of sci-fi, so there are composers that I love who do incredible work. Like Marco Beltrami is a wonderful composer who I'm a huge fan of, so there are many, but I have to say Alien 1.
Good answer.
Just kind of in closing, what's your favorite, well, 2 questions. What's your favorite piece of music, and what's your favorite score for game or film? And they can be the same thing, or they can be different.
Okay.
And why?
So favorite piece of music and favorite score?
Yeah.
Okay. Like one?
Yeah, it's got to be one. And then we're going to put this in writing. So
Okay. Well, just thinking back to growing up and my childhood and what really shaped my appreciation for the art of film scoring, another Goldsmith score for The Mummy, the 90s adventure movie. I think that's one of the greatest scores of all time. It's the melodies, like I can still sing, and it's so thematic, it's just so exciting. it's one of my favorites of all time. So yeah, Goldsmith, he's the best.
Sweet. So what we want is a double LP that's got Goldsmith's score for The Mummy and Sarah Barone's score for Alien Rogue Incursion on the B side. Sarah Barone, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so
where can
much.
people find you if they want to hear your music, elsewhere?
Yeah, well, I have a website, sarahbaronemusic.com, and I'm on Spotify as well, so you can check out some of my latest releases there. Yeah.
We will. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to meet you guys.
To find out more information about Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, please go to www.perfectorganism.com. If you would like to support the show, please go to www.perfectorganism.com/support. Thank you.